Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another episode of Boards and Brews, and today I am joined by Dr. Brains. He doesn't go by that, but he's that. But that's what he is in my heart and in my mind. Dr. Brian McDonald of Brains on Games, who, well, he's going to tell you what it is that he does, but he and I just spent the weekend in one of the coldest places on earth, Canada, at BreakOutCon, a small Toronto game convention. We hung out there for the weekend, played lots of games, did lots of stuff, had some good dinners, met some people, and he was foolish enough to come on Boards and Brews to talk about the convention. And so, jumping right in, the rapid fire questions. Look, I don't know what mental thing this is activating, but we got rapid fire questions that all the
Okay.
first time guests get. Here we go. Who the crap are you? What is your channel? What is your shtick? How and why did you get started in the media game? And what is your brewed beverage of choice today?
Wow, so many questions. Okay, well, I'm Brian McDonald. Like you said, I'm a psychologist in Ottawa, which is colder than Toronto. Toronto was, in fact, a balmy 10 degrees Celsius, and your friends who are watching can do the math on that.
They
Uh,
probably no, they probably
and
can't do the math. It's 50, everybody. It's 50.
nice and warm. We were outside with t-shirts on.
It snowed.
It's snowing up out there right now, where I am in Ottawa. Yeah, I'm a psychologist. I've worked in schools for many years as a school psychologist, helping kids get through school, especially kids who are having learning problems or problems with focus. And now I'm in private practice. I worked in the school boards for 15 years, and uh, I've been in private practice for a few years after that. And my practice is still focused on assessing and diagnosing and supporting kids who are having trouble at school. And things were going along just fine. My spare time was spent running Spartan races and doing those kinds of adventure challenges. And then the pandemic hit, and I had to
Wow,
close my
you hear that,
office.
everybody? Not only is he a doctor, but he's fit.
I
Unfortunately,
was at one time.
unfortunately, he's taken. He's taken, everybody. So simmer down, simmer down.
It's true. I have a Spartan trifecta medal back there somewhere, but that was a few years ago. Then
Oh,
the
he
pandemic hit.
meddled. Look at that. He's just dropping that in.
It's participation trophies. Um, yeah, when the pandemic hit, I had to close everything down. I was shut down for 3 months. And so I went from working 6 days a week to working 0 days a week, and I was getting cabin fever. It was becoming hard. There was nowhere we could go. Everything was shut down. The shutdown in my province where I live was one of the longer ones worldwide, and so I was looking for a way to occupy my time and feel productive. And I love board games and always have. And I often recommend that parents play games with their kids because the kids are already on screens playing games. So it's almost a linear transition. I would play all kinds of games with my kids, and then some of them I could recommend to parents. So I started Brains on Games is the channel on YouTube, and I include some information about the skills that people practice when they play these games. Now, my kids are in their 20s now, so I used to talk about more kids' games, and now I get to talk about games that grown-ups can play together with each other. But I still talk family games sometimes too.
And so what is your brewed beverage of choice? Actually, no, actually, but
Today,
before that, can you just give an example of the type of brain thing that might pair with some kind of game so the people watching or listening can kind of understand what you're talking about?
okay. Well, I mean, the very easiest, most straightforward one would be dexterity games. Okay, with dexterity games, you're working on a skill called proprioception, which is really just body awareness, but psychologists like to have fancy words for everything. And you're it's a practicing motor skills. So you really need to have a steady hand, and you can't be too impulsive when you're playing a game like Jenga or Rhino Hero, because if you move too fast, you're going to knock everything over and lose the game. So dexterity games are a game that allow people to practice that body awareness and often some fine motor skills. Most of the strategy games that are behind me here are all about executive functioning skills, which are the behaviors and skills that you need to work towards something, to establish a goal, to figure out steps to work towards that goal, to budget actions and resources in order to be as efficient as possible. And so that's something I get to talk about quite a bit. There's lots of memory games and things like that too, of course, and memories required for one of my favorite genres, trick taking games. You've got
I
to
feel like
count
I've heard that
cards.
somewhere.
You
Yeah,
have to have
yeah,
a good
yeah.
memory to count cards.
All right, now, what though? What was so I cut you off. I asked a question and cut you off before you even got the answer. I'm a pro host here. What
Mhm.
is your brewed beverage of choice today?
Well, today I'm drinking something called buckwheat tea, which is I only just tried it today. This is my first time drinking it. It's kind of a nutty flavor of tea. I was looking for something without caffeine because if I had caffeine at this hour of the day, I'd be awake until April. So caffeine free, has a taste that's similar to green tea. Delicious. You got a thumbs up here on my screen because my I'm recording on my iPhone. So if I move my hand the wrong way, you're going to get weird symbols popping
I
up
was about
beside
to
my
ask.
head.
I was like, how did that just happen?
It's magic. Let me tell you, it's magic. Sometimes if I do
Oh
that, you'll get
my
hurt. See?
gosh, that's crazy. I need to start recording on my phone more. So, but
You have to be careful.
is the buckwheat tea a winner?
It is a winner. It is. I'm not a big tea drinker. I kind of wish I was more of a tea aficionado, but I'm not. I really like coffee, but decaf coffee seems to defeat the purpose of drinking coffee. So this is a good tea, buckwheat tea or soba cha, it's called. And you don't want to get the ones that are made from leaves. You want kernels, apparently.
Obviously. Well, when you come to Gen Con, you'll have to bring some. And so
Don't make
I
me spit
am
out my drink.
that would be great because it would freeze before it hit the screen. It'd be fine. Now, so I am just drinking just some iced tea, which is a very American thing, but just drinking some iced tea in my Chip Theory Games Origins pint glass that they were kind enough to give me a copy of the glass. That's what they gave me when I was at actually ironically at Gen Con they gave me the Origins pint glass. I guess they had some left over.
If you went to Origins, you might get the Gen Con glass.
Oh man, that's deep. That's deep. All right, all right. But enough nonsense. Enough nonsense. Or actually, let's get started on the nonsense. So what we're talking about today, we're just talking about Breakout Con 2024, which was literally 2 days ago. So we're very fresh off it. And so what we're going to go through, everyone, is we're going to kind of just talk about the con, what we thought about it, what we liked, what maybe could have been better. And then after the brief break, we're just going to talk about our top experiences that we had. Now, I'm going to have coming up very soon a video that just breaks down all the games that I played. I always do that ranked bottom to top, all of them. And you can actually see a little bit of that on Brian's channel where we did 2 days, a little recap from the day prior. And did you wind up doing a day three recap after I left, or were you too heartbroken?
No, I was very heartbroken. I didn't get to do a final meeting with the Hungry Gamer, but instead, I don't know if we want to jump ahead to day three, but what happened was, um, it was like 5:20. I had dinner reservations at 6 with my wife, and I ran into Sen Fung Lim, who also had dinner reservations with his son at a different restaurant at 6 o'clock, and he popped in to meet with me for about 15 minutes at 5:30. So I didn't get to meet the Hungry Gamer, but I did meet a Hungry Gamer.
Gotcha. All right. So you got I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah, yeah.
You
So
see what I did
you
there?
had a real important media person on there. I got it.
And also Sen Fung Lim.
Yep. Oh, that's very sweet. I've never met him. I've talked to him. I interviewed him once a long time ago. I've chatted with him online, and he was actually very kind back during the pandemic. Well, I guess I assume he still is very kind. But back during the pandemic when it was real lockdown, he had put something out about, he has some games that can be played solo. And if anybody knows somebody that was just locked in and struggling, no questions asked, he mailed him a game. And so he actually sent a copy of one of his games, one of his personal copies of one of his game designs out to somebody that I just knew was struggling. They were just having a
Mm,
really hard time. And he didn't advertise it. I just thought it was such a kind thing that he did. So anyhow, I
He's
wish.
he is very gracious. He's gracious with his time, and he's a generous person. All of my interactions with him have been positive. And he's now I didn't know this. I knew he was a professor. I didn't know he was a therapist too. So we were talking about that on the show. So he's
Oh,
a
so what?
professor of psychology and a therapist.
Gotcha. So what I'm understanding is when I go and watch that video, I'm not going to understand a single word that's said.
Well, I mean, we were simpatico about some things, but he was talking about game design.
Yeah,
So
you're talking about psychocyprosis. What was that word you used earlier?
proprioception,
Proprioception,
the sixth
psychocyprosis,
sense.
whatever. It's all the same. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna jump at the beginning. So just the con itself. What were the things that you thought just really were great about the convention?
Yvonne is number one. The staff were fantastic. And honestly, the folks who were running the hotel were amazing. Also, that part was a great experience. There was never like there was always someone to help you out. Um, we'll talk about some downsides later, but uh, great staff, friendly folks, great atmosphere. Yvonne took me right aside and gave me a tour of the whole place. Introduced me to people. You got to meet that person. You should go in there and do that. Even on the last day, he was pulling people aside to say, "Hey, this is Brian." So we had. She made it fun and easy. This was my first con. I'd never been to a game convention before because I started this just when everything was locked down. So this is only kind of the second year that things are wide open. Um, so it was my first convention.
Vaughn was great. We already talked about her in the one of your videos, but yeah, she really for everybody, she is the person in charge of the all the media stuff, and I think maybe a little bit of programming also.
Mhm.
And she just was constantly running around doing honestly more than she needed to do. But yeah, she was great, lovely. We got to play a game with her on the last day, which was delightful. And yeah,
Mhm.
she was fantastic. I think the first thing that I'm going to highlight though is one of mine is they didn't call it the flea market. I don't know what they called it, but the flea market that they did, where you buy people's games. It
The
was
auction.
the yes, the auction. Even though that's not a good. It's a bad word for it because there was there's nobody up there doing, oh, I gotta get $30, $30 here, got $30,
No.
oh got 30, 30, 30, got 30, do I hear 35? No one's doing that. Not an auction. It wasn't even like a silent auction where you're like, bidding, bidding, bidding. No, it was just they had prices, and every few hours the prices would drop, and it said very clearly on there at 2 o'clock, this is only going to be $50. At 4 o'clock, it'll be $35 or whatever. So you knew what
Yeah.
it was. But because the prices were just set, and because you weren't dealing, like, usually these flea markets, there's tables and mooks like me are standing there like shouting and trying to get you over and wheeling and dealing. There was no wheeling and dealing, which means people could get in there easy. And there was a lot more games than you usually have at these things because you didn't have a bunch of people standing there trying to make sure, the games are set up in a pretty way. It was just lined up.
Yeah.
There was so much good stuff there. It really was one of the best flea markets I've ever seen at a game convention. It was
It
fantastic.
was it was packed wall to wall with games and packed wall to wall with people who were buying games. And so you're right. They called it the bring and buy auction. It really wasn't. It was more like a consignment store, right? Where people just brought their games and put the prices on it, and then uh, Breakout sold them, and presumably those people got some money back if their game sold.
Yeah. Yeah, it just very, very cool. And then the only other thing that I'm going to say is they did a really good job of separating out rooms for different communities. They had a kids gaming room, which had a table of games for kids, but you could bring in your own game, and it was made for younger people. They had a couple of rooms that were masked rooms for the people who feel more comfortable still being masked or need to still be masked or whatever. No questions asked. Like, hey, if you're in this room, that's what this room is. And they were smaller rooms, but they had that there, so there was a place for everybody to be. And I loved all of that. Loved all of that.
They
And
even really, when if you think about it, they had kind of wings that were, they were really separated out quite well. Like there was an area for miniatures painters, and I never even went in there, but you could walk by and see what those guys were doing, and they had all these tables set up with paints and cups to rinse their brushes in, and everything there was well set up. They had a huge room that was just for RPGs. They had some wandering RPG players too. There were some RPG rooms, in other spots just for overflow, I think. And then they had the large ballroom where they were doing they had a little store on one side, and then there was the big library where people could sign out games and play games. So it was super well divided up. There were a couple of rooms that were publishers who were demoing
mhm,
prototypes or already games that are already in retail. Yeah, it was very well organized and easy to track everything down and find everything.
yeah.
1,600 people, Sen said he heard were at the con, which for me is for Canada, I would say is probably a
I
very
mean,
big
isn't that
convention.
like the entire population of Ottawa? Like, that's about it?
1,600. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty close.
I mean, I hear there's a lot of space between people in Canada.
Yeah,
Like,
a
yeah,
lot of space.
yeah, people per square kilometer, it's very low, is my understanding.
And well, I mean, I have an acre. I'm sitting on an acre
Wow. So it's 2 people per acre is what is
right
what
now. Yeah, it was four
wow.
people for a while, but we can spread our wings now that the
Yeah,
kids are gone.
you finally got rid of those.
Oh yes, they're still on the payroll though, William.
Oh, tragic. Tragic. Unions, huh? I say that.
Yeah,
I'm a
tell me
union
about it. They have a very strong union, my two boys.
guy. Yeah. Yeah, they keep, upping their rates.
Yeah, every so often they need a cost of living increase.
But anyhow, what were your cons from the con? See what I did there?
That's
What are the
good.
things that, and you know what, I don't even like to use the word con because I don't think either of us really has any big complaints. But what do you think could have gone better?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay, I feel like, and it's not a con of the con, but I just feel like there was so much that, and like we were running off our feet. If we weren't playing games, we were running to the media room to record something, or running to find food. um, there was so much going on. I didn't get to see the things that not everything that I wanted to see. There were panels that a few people I wouldn't have minded seeing their talk. There was some performative, like role playing stuff that was going on with audience participation that I thought would have been fun. But we were rushing. For myself, anyway, I was rushing from one place to the other and trying to meet up with all the people that I wanted to make sure that I touched base with before I left. And it was just so much packed into so little time. I wish there would have been one extra day even to kind of spread things out a little bit. But that's
Guaranteed,
like an embarrassment of riches.
you would still be saying that if you had one extra day, guaranteed,
Yeah,
guaranteed.
there's a lot. There's a lot going on over there. It was a lot. Look, it was a lot of fun. The con, I mean, the real con is that it wasn't the only convention going on in the hotel.
Mhm.
That hotel was packed to the gills with people, and if you wanted to go downstairs to the restaurant or to get a coffee at the bar, there were lineups. It was a long wait to get food. It was a long wait to get a coffee. Maybe by midnight things were slowing down around that area,
Mhm.
but wow, it was packed to the gills in
Yeah.
there.
No, definitely packed. So the only things that I would toss out is one, back to that flea market. It was cash only, and I I'm sure there are logistics behind why it's cash only, but it just seemed to me that should have had PayPal. We say Venmo. You have some other weirdness up there. Something another.
E-transfer,
E
Interact.
transfer. Yeah, it just seems like they should have for maybe for next year have that set up because who carries cash?
I would have walked out of there with a game if I had cash on me. There was one that it was in my hand, and I was like, "Ugh, it's cash only." I didn't have any cash. I didn't know where I don't know the area. I don't live in Toronto. I wasn't going to go running around in the snow looking for a
See,
debit
because it was
machine,
cold. You admit it.
right?
You're a weak Canadian, I guess. Yeah. So I
No,
think
there was too much to do to run around looking for a bank machine. If they
yeah.
would have had Apple Pay or something like that, it would have been easy peasy, but I'm sure that's gonna affect something to do with taxes or
Yeah.
whatever. Now there's a
But so,
paper trail.
that is what the benefit that the other flea markets I've been to have is, it's individual people. And you're
Yeah.
there, and and a lot of people do come to these things with cash. Is people that aren't us are prepared, but I was able to say, sure, PayPal me, or even my buddy Don was there too, and I don't have Venmo. Like I should have Venmo, but I don't have Venmo. I'll be like, I'll be like, go over there and Venmo Don. Go Venmo Don. Who's Don? I'll shout Don, and then you'll do it. Um, so that there was that, which was a little bit bummer. I mean, it worked for me because I did not want to come home with any games because I was flying, and I was flying Air Canada. And I don't have any faith in Air Canada. I'm sorry, Canada, but I have no faith in Air Canada. I just
I'm
don't.
not sure Canadians have great faith in Air Canada,
That's what I
but I
hear.
took the train, and it was a problem because I did come back with the hockey sock of games, and there was too much. My bag was too heavy. There was only carry on the train, and my bag was 57 pounds,
Mm-mm.
and I had to separate out the games from that bag as much as possible and divide things up until it was 38 pounds. So you know, I took a few pounds of games out of that bag. Luckily, I had one of those little board game
Totes
carry
or whatever.
boxes, not a big one like you had. I just had a little one that would squish up into my suitcase just to keep the games organized and so that pieces wouldn't fly around if
Oh,
there
right.
were games that
Yeah.
were open, right? But we were lucky that we had that because I needed to separate the bags for the train.
Yeah. So, anyhow, I still think they should. Then you could have bought more games and had more of a problem. It would have been great.
First world problems.
Yeah, yeah. And then the only other thing I'm going to say is, since I am a board game person, BreakOutCon currently, I'm going to say is 70% RPG, 30% board games, maybe 60/40, at least as far as the events that are available go.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of those things that as more people start showing that'll start on its own, maybe shifting. But I'd like to see a little more events for the board game. So I think there was maybe like one panel or something for that was really board game related. I think Eric Lang was talking, but I think most of the rest were
Yeah.
RPG related.
I think that some independent publishers had something. I know that Scott Kelly was on a panel. He's the designer of Sonoda, which is a game that I tried and liked at the con. There was I think a Catan World Tournament qualifier.
Oh
There's
yeah,
a
there was the
Radlands
World
tournament
Series of board
going on.
games thing going on.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess I'm wrong. Fair enough.
Well,
Fine.
I wouldn't say you're wrong, but it was 60-40.
Oh yeah, maybe 60
I think
40.
it makes sense because you have to include the miniatures painters there too. Those guys aren't necessarily board gamers. They
That's
were,
true.
you know,
That's true.
s-
Well,
so you,
the way I look at that is that the miniatures painters I feel like are probably a split, right? You have your people who are
mm,
painting their D&D minis or their role play game minis, and the people who are painting like their well, you just got a copy Omicron Protocol, painting those minis. So those kinds of things. All right, last question on this: would you go back, and are you now wanting to go to other cons?
the eternal question. Yes, I definitely will go back. And yes, do I want to go to other cons? Um, the spirit is willing. My work schedule is getting in the way of the upcoming cons this year. But there are even my wife, who is not a gamer, who was just left to her own devices for the entire weekend, had a good enough time that she said, "You know what? Now that I kind of know what to expect, I wouldn't mind go just tagging along with you to another one of these things." So it's going to happen. Uh, maybe before the next breakout, and maybe after.
Right? Yeah, I thought it was great. I'd love to go back. It's a long ways from San Jose to Toronto. It's a
Yes,
long ways. It's as expensive as any of the big cons that I wind up going to. A little bit less because I have a friend, Canadian Kev, who I get to stay with, just down the street. But someday I'd love to come back. And Yvonne, if you want to subsidize that, I'll be there next year because
yeah,
BreakOutCon makes so much money they can just fly people out from all over the place. But anyhow,
absolutely. If
yeah.
they had an exchange, if she knew the way to San Jose,
That's good.
we could trade places.
I see what you did there. I do
Yeah,
know the
that's
way to
my
San
age.
Jose.
I
I
remember
just
that song.
yeah, I just turn around and I'm here. So I know the way. All right, so now we're going to take a brief break here. First of all, everybody, you want to be a Hungry Gamer channel member. It's the best. Right, doctor? Doctor, would you prescribe Hungry Gamer channel membership?
I think I would. If that was something I did, I definitely would do it.
There you had it. 1 out of 1 content creator doctors named Brian say you need it. And then
One out
also
of one doctors
recently,
agree.
yep. Then recently, Noble Knight Games has offered to sponsor the channel. And so what that means, guys, is it means they will send me games on occasion. It also means that down in the description there is an affiliate link, which means if you ever buy games from Noble Knight Games, use that link and I get credit to buy more games, which wind up on the channel. So that's how that sponsorship works. They're not sending me money. But I will say the reason I said yes to it is not because I'm just a shill. I am a shill, but because they really do have an awesome collection of games that you can't find. They have a great collection of out of print games. So take a look, check it out if you're looking to buy games. Maybe check out Noble Knight. Now you're going to hear a little commercial.
Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, so we are back and now jumping into our 3 favorite experiences of the con. Experiences can mean whatever it is that you want it to mean. And I'm going to jump in first because we actually have a fair amount of overlap here. And I'm going to jump in with we played a game called Illiterati from Gap Closure Games. And I actually played it twice. I played it once just with the Canadian Kev and then once with you and him. And the teamwork that we had on that, it was so much fun the way that we were making all these different words all over and like passing words back and forth. And we worked so well together. It was never close that I was never afraid that we weren't going to pull that off. We had one book burned, but I assume you did that because you wanted me to feel at home.
Well, you can get up to 4, so
Yeah.
I
So
think
we
we
were
were okay.
fine. We were fine.
Yeah, yep.
But just and we had all kinds of just like we had the word Jesuit and drowning out there at one point. I mean, that's to me that was impressive. And so I've become a big fan of this game over the weekend. I really enjoyed it. But I just had a blast playing that game with you guys. So that's actually my number 3 best moment of the con, best experience of the con.
Oh boy, I don't even remember what I said they were, so I'm gonna go. I don't remember what I put in the Google Doc, but
You don't have the doc in front of you?
mm,
Oh, it's an amateur
I
move.
had it,
Yeah,
but it disappeared.
it's all right. I'll tell
So
you what you got.
we're gonna play this by ear. What were my
Ooh,
3 best experiences of the con? Look, I had my number 3 would be I had a lot of fun teaching you guys Mori and playing Lunar Rush in the first night. We had a
no.
I had a great time with both of those games. You know I love both of them. So Uh, got to now Kev hadn't played Lunar Rush before, and he's not a guy who's so much into those kinds of games, but he pulled off a victory even.
Yep.
And yeah, we just had a great time with playing that game. And then I got to show you guys a trick taker, which I like those trick takers when they're
And
good.
then
They're
you
really good.
proceeded to bury us in that trick
Well,
taker.
I mean, I've played it before, so I was lucky enough to
I
have
came
enough
in
experience.
dead ass last in Lunar Rush, and I've played that game like a million times. So but yeah, just totally
It's all
buried.
luck.
Yeah, that was fun. I actually, even though I just was getting wrecked in Mori, that is a fun game in the way. We're not going to go into how you play, but suffice it to say that you can pass around these X's that are might be good, but probably are going to be bad, and we're just throwing
I
these.
mean, that's what makes the game so good is
Mhm.
those X's, and every round is different, but we won't go too much into it
Yeah,
because I've done episodes already about that
but
game.
and so it was just a lot of fun how that was just shaking out, and when things get passed around, there'd be times when it'd be like, well, I know you're going to do this, and I hate you before you even do anything. It really was a lot of fun. All right, so
Mhm.
my number 2, and I know that you're probably going to want to talk about this too, and that was a game that you forced Canadian Kevin and I to go play in the most aggressive Canadian way possible. Layers. And this is a game from KTBG, and it's their Kickstarter or a Game Found coming in the fall. And it's a head-to-head two-player game where you start out, you build a dungeon, and you do it with little tiles and little wooden walls and all that kind of stuff. And you can't
Each
see
player is building their own
yeah, at the
dungeon at
same
the same
time.
time.
Face to face, but is blocked off. And then you have this little pad of paper and a little meeple, and you'll be moving your meeple around on the pad of paper, which is representing you exploring their dungeon. And every time you explore a room, they tell you wall to the north, wall to the south, and a monster. And so you're drawing out in real time what the dungeon you're discovering is. And there's mechanics of resource management of cubes as you want to fight things and you chuck some dice and all that. And what was a great experience about it is I could not have cared less about this game. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I really don't care at all. And you just kept going on about it. And so finally I walked over just to see it, and the lead developer on it clearly he was having a break. And I was like, "Could you show me this?" He's like, "Okay." And I texted Kevin, and he was at Tim Hortons, and I said, "Well, book it on back, but bring me a coffee." And we learned and played this game in 37 minutes, and I was laughing so much as I was just building my dungeon and laughing like, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny if he missed this?" And the whole time we're playing through, and as I'm exploring this dungeon, I was looking, I was like, "I'm gonna be so mad if it's right here." And you know where it was? Right there. And I never got
Mhm.
it. And it truly was a lot of fun. I had such a good time playing that. So that's my number 2.
You know what? That was a great game. That's my number one. There's a reason why I told you guys you need to check this thing out. And I got to stay long enough. I won't steal my number one thunder, but I got to stay long enough to hear about some of the other things that they're adding to it, because the demo that you played and that I played was the base first level introduction
Mhm.
to the mechanics of the game. They hadn't even added all the fancy stuff yet, but the designer filled me in on what some of those fancy things are going to be. And this is a game. I think this game is going to be a big hit because it's so fun and funny. Designing your dungeon and laughing maniacally when you think, "Oh, he's going to be so bad if this happens," and then exploring the dungeon and cursing yourself for going the wrong way
Yeah,
when you
and
hit
I
a fork
mentioned
in the
this
road.
on our recap. There was so much evil joy that and this was I will say this was Kevin's idea. It actually wasn't my idea. When we came back and saw you and we just straight face said, "Why did you send us to do that?" That was one of the worst things we've ever experienced. And everybody, even if you're just listening, he was actually Brian was wearing a mask, but you could feel every part of him die a little bit. And like his shoulders slumped, his whole face fell. And they're like, no,
Mm.
no, no, it's fine. But oh, it's
I
beautiful.
was like, did I completely misjudge these people? Do they have terrible taste in board games?
All right. So what's your number 2?
So my number two, and it's different from what I think I put on the Google Doc as we're talking, and I'm thinking about it. My number two is that I got to meet some designers in person who, look, I gave myself a thumbs up, who who I'd only met online, or even really not at all. I'd gotten a comment or just a quick email from someone who sent me a game or who liked a video I made about their game. But I got to the designers of Shobu came and introduced themselves to me, and that's a game that I really really like, and
Boy,
my
I tell you,
kids now
I
are
felt like a
playing it.
third wheel in that
Oh,
conversation.
wow! It was
I mean,
just
the love fest between Brains on Games and Shobu back and forth. Let me tell you, it was uncomfortable.
I think I was an early adopter of Shobu, and I just thought it's such an awesome game, and one day we'll play that one and we'll see what we think. I got to meet Scott Kelly from BS Games, who's a math teacher who designs games. So it was nice to meet him in person, and his partner in crime, Bill, and oh, I'm trying to think of who else I met. There were so many folks, and of course I met Sen. at the very end. Senfung Lim, who's designed some games that I really like. I got a scoop about the game that's coming up next from Sen and Jay Cormier,
Oh, you mean
and he
Core
let
Discoveries? The that
yes, which you had already discovered.
yeah,
You told me.
I've already mailed it off to somebody else.
There you go. You didn't
It's
send it to
already
me,
in the
but shipping to
can,
Canada.
man.
Shipping to Canada is very expensive. Um, but
Well, I mean,
also he
you
mentioned
do
that.
know that both those designers are Canadian, right?
Mhm, mhm. I meant you didn't ship me your copy.
Oh, well, of
Um,
course not. Actually, I do hope you do get a chance to check it out because I am actually very curious what the brain things about that one is because my brain doesn't work on it. I just
mhm.
my boy.
Yeah, he told me how it works and how it progresses over time. So yeah, it is a game I'm interested in, 100% for sure. He also let me know another um, preview of something I'm very interested in. They've got a new publisher and a new edition coming for Junk Art.
Oh, I think I'd heard that. I think I'd heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
I'm excited. Junk Art's coming back in 2025, and I am, I like trick takers, but dexterity games. Hoo 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 hoo. I'm a fan.
all right. So my number one. It's a little bit nebulous because we didn't actually fully experience the game, but it was the experience around the discovery of this game that is my number one experience, and that is the game Collab. And so we were sitting down to play Tesseract, which I will also say I love that game and I had a great time losing horribly at that. But
Hmm.
while we were sitting there, the guy running the game said, "Hey, you guys, everybody should go check out that game over there that John has been teaching." And it's a game called Collab. And he just gave us the rundown of the theme. And the theme being basically you're kind of down in your luck, super scientist or mad scientist, depending on your perspective, I guess. And you are cohabitating in a rented office space of labs with a bunch of other super scientists. And so you're kind of, running into each other and you sending each other's minions to do things and sharing resources. And it just so silly to me. And I love a theme like that. And then, it's got tableau building, which I love, and it's got a worker placement, which I like a lot, and rolling dice and all these things. And I was like,
That
okay.
beautiful modular board
Yeah.
where
But at the time,
parts
I
of it are
hadn't seen that. I
randomized.
didn't even know. And so, just based on that description, while you guys were learning Tesseract, because I already knew, I was sitting there, I was like, hmm. And I'm like looking across the table, like, okay, Portal Dragon games. Okay. And I'm like sitting there on my phone, rapidly emailing just to see if it was possible if I could, get a copy. And because you can't buy one right now. It's Kickstarter being delivered, and I now know they're pretty much all sold out, but they do have another campaign that's going to be coming. And shortly after we finished that game, I had an email already back saying, you know what? Yes, we can do that. But then, which was exciting, but then that night when we were playing Marvel United, I happened to see the guy, Jonathan, who had been running those games. And I just walked over. I was like, hey, is there any chance that, in like an hour you can teach us this game? And he was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Well, we'll see. If nothing else, I'll just give you like the brief overview and then you guys can play and it'll be fine. And then he came over and we were chatting. And it turns out he's the designer or one of the two designers and it is his personal copy that he brought and he taught us the game, he explained stuff, he chatted with us. It and it just was so what a great experience for me. And we played about a third of the game. You
Mhm.
played till someone gets 12 cards in their tableau. We played till 5. So the game was just starting to develop and I liked everything that I saw, but mostly I just loved how excited he was about his game, that we wanted to play his game, and to the point he's like, "Okay, guys, I'm probably gonna go to bed before you're done, but just hide it under that table over there. It's his only copy. He literally
You're just
doesn't."
gonna leave it with us.
Yeah, and just hide it under the table, and it'll be fine. And I loved everything about that experience. And
Yeah.
I think in like 5 weeks or so, I'm gonna get a copy, and I'm so excited to play it. And I just loved everything about that, even though it was like 2 a.m. when we finally packed it in because we realized we're not in college anymore.
I'm jealous. I'm gonna watch that video for sure. Well, I'll have my eyes peeled to see
Well,
what
you can
the
come on down
retail
to
version components
Just
look
come
like.
on down to
Oh
KublaCon. We can
yeah,
play. Yeah,
no
just
problem. We'll do.
get the dog sled going.
If I knew my way to San Jose, I could do that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Lairs was my number one. Like I said earlier, Lairs was my number one. It was a surprise for me. I mean, I thought it had kind of a dungeon crawler theme and cute artwork, and I thought, oh, this might be a neat
Wait, did we
game
skip
to
your number
take a look
2?
at.
Did we skip your number
To
2?
No, my number two was meeting all the
Oh,
designers
right, 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 right,
who.
right, right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
going
yeah,
back and
and
just reboot and say, oh, and so yep, Lairs my number one. I'm gonna chop that
okay,
out.
sure. So my number one, I've already told you my number one. My number one was Lairs, and Lairs was a game that um, I didn't know too much about it going in. I saw the artwork. It said play with designer on the schedule, and so I signed up thinking, well, it's kids table board games, and I like some of their other games for the channel. Right, my kids are older, so they're not always going to play games for kids, but sometimes the neighbors' kids come down, and I show them a game, and it's kind of nice to be sort of the game guru on the street. And so I sat down to play this game. The designer was showing us how and kind of taking notes as we went, and just expecting, hey, this is a neat game, and maybe I'll cover it when it comes out. And but oh my god, I had so much fun making that dungeon, um, even with the prototype pieces. And then I had a lot of fun running through the dungeon and trying to find everything. And I thought that the mechanism of moving cubes into, you've got fresh cubes and you can save cubes for later and then use them twice in the next turn. And you've got spent cubes and there's fatigue that you get from running into traps or monsters. All of it was fun to make the dungeon and set up tricks for your opponent. It was fun to run through their dungeon, and then the designer spent about half an hour, because like you said, it was 37 minutes to finish the thing. He spent a half an hour, 40 minutes with us showing us all of the other more advanced pieces that he's working on. So of course there's more difficult monsters that you're going to have to battle that maybe are vulnerable to being attacked using certain kind of cubes or certain kinds of dice that you can buy in certain kinds of ways. There are doors with locks and keys that you have to find. So I could just imagine putting a locked door right in front of the entrance and then the key on the other side. So they have to go all the way over and go all the way back and hit all the traps and monsters along the way. There are monsters that move, and there's going to be ways that you'll be able to add cubes to your character of different colors so you can customize your character. So you might be a super speedy type or a sneaky type who can peer around corners before walking through and into a trap, or someone who can disarm traps. The traps are changing. They're going to have crushing walls. They're going to have oh, look, there's my thumbs up again. I like crushing
For
walls.
those of you who are just listening, because Brian is zooming on his cell phone, anytime he does a thumbs up, a digital thumbs up pops up on the screen. So every time we
Yes.
mention that, that's what's going on there.
Yeah, because I'm counting with my thumb, I guess, is where I always start when I'm counting. And so it thinks that I'm giving it a thumbs up, but I am giving this game a thumbs up just based on what I played. So you'll be able to customize your meeple that's running through. You can customize the monsters in the dungeon. They become more difficult as you go. That idea of crushing traps, I really like. There are going to be secret doors. There are going to be treasures that maybe they just look like treasures if you peer in, but when you step on them, you find out that they're a monster. Um, it's going to feel like a dungeon crawler where you're the dungeon keeper.
Yeah. And I'll say, and I'm not going to give the exact number simply because it's not set yet. But I did speak to Helena at KTBG, and I just asked her what the price point was going to be. And what I will say is, for those of us in the hobby game market, it's an inexpensive game that, from everything that you have told me, that you've told me that you heard about, I heard a little bit. What it seems like a lot of replay. I have a strong love of head-to-head two-player games, and there's not a lot of them that I truly love, though. I mean, this one potentially could be in my go-to list of head-to-head two-player games, and it's a small list. It is Skull Hollow or Mole Peak, whichever flavor you want. It's
Hmm.
Pew Pew Bookie Book or Wizards of the Grimoire. It's
Hmm.
Dice Command, and
Oh, Dice Command. I
yeah,
see that on your shelf.
oh yeah, that's great by a Canadian.
Yes, I have that game. It's on my shelf over there.
Oh, yeah, I really, really like it. And there's one that now that I'm talking about that, there's one more that is escaping me because I'm putting myself on the spot. And there's a couple that I have coming in that have potential to be there, but this one could have the potential to be there too. And I know it's coming. I think in the fall is what they said.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
long
Coming
time
to,
to wait.
to crowdfunding in the fall, so
Right.
probably
So
delivering in
to your
2025.
door in 2048, something like that.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, all in all, Breakout Con, we had a great time. Highly recommend it if you can get to Toronto and you can bear being in Canada in a cold time. It's
If you
abs
can bear being in Canada, who wouldn't want to be in Canada?
it's cold, man. It's cold.
Yeah.
But there you have it. So, before I let you go though, what are your gaming words of wisdom?
Oh boy, you really are putting me on the spot. Gaming words of wisdom. Okay, well, I was thinking about this on my way to the con and after the con. So I'm not going to give you just a sound bite. I'm sorry if that's what you're you
Oh,
were
no,
hoping
no one
for
ever does.
for this part.
It's funny.
I'll be a
Even my occasional regular co-host Don, he always has to do this, and he always forgets every time. And so
right.
you never know what we're gonna get. So sometimes people go on for minutes. Sometimes they're like, "Have fun." So whatever you got, go for it.
Well, I will go on for minutes. If you wanted to distill it down, it would be play games with people you love.
Go on for
Because
minutes.
yeah.
Pontificate.
So
You went to school
as
for
I'm
37 years. Let it
I
out.
did 37 years. Well, no, I went to grade 23. I always tell people I went to grade 23. That's how long it took me from grade one up on. But anyway, um, I was packing to get on the train to go to Toronto to meet up with you and with all the other folks that were going to Breakout. And all of the I have to do a lot of reading for my job. I get articles that come across my desk and information about what are the issues in psychology these days. And the epidemic of loneliness is one that people are talking about, well, especially since the pandemic. It's hard for grown-ups to make friends. Where do grown-ups meet people outside of work? And so all I could think of as I'm packing is what grown-ups need is to find something that they like and find like-minded people to do that thing with. Because I met a bunch of folks, who were, these are some cool people who I expect, I mean, present company accepted, who I expect that I'll be in touch with, and in contact with in the future. Maybe get to play games with them in the future. As I said at the beginning, I started playing games because I wanted my kids to be off screens, and I didn't want to just say find something to do. I wanted to do something with them. So they're already playing games. Maybe they'd like me to teach them a game, which was fantastic because they weren't interested in watching YouTube rules demonstrations. I got to teach my kids how to do something. And that is a rare experience these days because the kids just Google it. They don't ask their parents for advice because nine times out of 10, we don't know how to do it, but they're
So
not going to
you say,
sit
hold
down.
on while I go Google this.
Not at all. Well, often I will do that, especially when they were younger, but not with the board game rules
Yeah.
because they're not reading the rules. I'm reading the rules. Now they will sit down and read the rules and teach their friends, but they'll still ask me, Dad, how was it that this worked again? So, I still get to kind of be the alpha or the educator in that situation with the boys, which is exactly what a parent's supposed to be. And with friends it gets to go both ways. Sometimes I'm teaching you a game and sometimes you're teaching me a game. That happened a lot over the weekend. But the playing games is an experience, and when you find a good game and you have laughs with your friends, that's something that sticks with you and it's great for your mental health. And if you can do it with your family, even better. There's my words of wisdom.
No, right. That was a that was a pretty good one. So you know what? Occasional regular co-host Don, you're on notice that your next words of wisdom better be on point. Oh, and I'll say the occasional regular co-host Don, that is one of the designers of Backyard Chickens, which
Ah, which
which
is
is
sitting on my shelf over there. Like I said, I have a 15-pound bag of games that I
mhm.
unpacked, and I've got I don't know where I'm going to put all of these games that I brought back from
Time to
Breakout.
cull some games, buddy. Time to start culling.
Oh,
I'm looking
I,
behind
I
you.
mean,
I can think of a couple back there that I'd cull.
oh, I love so many of these games. And if my kids like them, they've got to stay on the shelf. If I had fun playing them with my boys, they're going to stick around no matter how much I like them or don't like them.
That's
Um,
funny.
the Duke, if you haven't played the Duke, oh my gosh, that was a game we played again and again.
Yep, I got it. It's floating around somewhere. I've never actually played it, but someone told us it's a lot of fun, and so we have a
Yeah,
copy of it. It's just we haven't done it yet.
that
But
is that would be on your list of great head-to-head two-player games.
okay, all right. I'll have to
Mhm.
try it now. Now I'll have to try it.
Mhm.
All right. Now I'm not going to keep you forever because I don't want you to get in trouble with your wife. I don't want you to
She's
be.
being very quiet.
I know, I know. So yeah, either she's having a lovely nap, she's reading something real good, or she's plotting your demise. One of those. One of those three is my guess.
She can multitask.
Oh, all three at
Could
once.
be more than one of those 3.
She is dreaming about the demise that that you will get. But everybody, I joke. I met Brian's wife. She is lovely as can be. Like even for,
Thank you.
like
Yeah.
even like not even just generic Canadian lovely. Like lovely, lovely. So because all
I
Canadian,
think I'll keep her.
yeah.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyhow, everybody, make sure you check out Brains on Games. You can find down in the description of either the podcast or of this video a link to his content. Make sure you check it out if you want to be smarter about your gaming stuff and know what your brain does. And also, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, do all that kind of stuff. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
There it is. Yeah, I managed to do literally nothing for
Uh,
8 hours today. That's not true.
yeah.
About 20 minutes of each class was explaining stuff, putting them in groups. But I just, so stupid. I have so much to do now.
Is there an intermission where we can refill our drinks? I have only one. All right. Meanwhile, look at this coaster. This is what we're using today.